Good morning from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's 10:32 a.m. on the 6th of December 2024, and if you're a Lutheran or a Calvinist or you hail from the Netherlands, it also happens to be St. Nicolaus Day. But I'm not a Christian, but raised by a Dutchman, it's in there, it's in my memory banks. It just pops up from time to time. These random memories that actually don't impact on my lived experience at all, apart from childhood. So I guess Black Peter will be handing me a burning hot coal to bite into instead of something delectable like echte Lübecker marzipan, am I right? But I already had my quota of marzipan last week. I ate the whole lot in one sitting. It's diabolical giving me marzipan. You're better off to give me black coal. I could just sit it on the shelf and admire it for perpetuity, whereas the marzipan was a second on my lips and a lifetime on my hips. But there's a few of my gentleman friends that don't mind that at all. My very voluptuous, well-endowed, heavily overburdened by marzipan hips. Not that anyone gets to, yes, we won't go there, babies. But there'll be none of that. They can all just admire from a safe distance of at least, a foot away from me. I only allow those who are worthy of my body, mind, heart, spirit, soul to have intimacy with me, and because I haven't met anyone who's both available and that level of majestic love for me, there'll be none of that. I'm not settling for anything less, babies. And it's an amazing thing when a woman discovers her true value and worth and reclaims her sexuality after, by the gods, it's 9.5 years celibacy now. An amazing thing happens. She laughs at it all and flips her hair and does on mosh and goes out into the world feeling beautiful and powerful, as every woman ever born should always have been raised to be. Beautiful, powerful, loving, worthy, and a little bit delightful at times. And save your sexuality for someone who absolutely adores you. Otherwise, it's just an exercise in bathos and the difference between a fabulous gastronomic feast of the best, most gourmet food and McDonald's. Once got taken to McDonald's on Valentine's Day by my drug-fucked ex. That was his idea of romance, by the way. All his money went on weed and speed, and I dread to think what else. But anyway, ultimately it wasn't even about that level of disrespect. It was the fact that while sitting at McDonald's, he really wasn't there at all. He might as well not have been there at all. And I partook of my McDonald's because I was hungry and it was lunchtime. And I thought, this is the last time I have lunch with this man. Pretty much was too. It was a waste of my time and energy. Absolute waste. And that's when you know that love has finally died. And it just all becomes a cesspit and a quagmire of nothingness. Not even worth putting on lipstick for. The only reason I put lipstick on for my YouTube videos is I very rarely wear makeup at home, and I make these at home. And I sort of because I'm getting older now and I'm a bit grey and sallow and I need that little bit of lipstick for a little bit of colour, boosts me up. But by the gods, the things us women do to make ourselves, appealing to the opposite sex, and half the time, you blokes don't even care whether we're there or not. What did my ex used to say to me? Any holes of gold? That's how fucking crass he was. So we won't wallow in that ugliness of that long time ancient now memory from 14 years ago. We will rejoice in what is, in a man who sees me not as a hole with a goal, but a goal with the most delightful pleasure and deep honour and respect for me as a woman, and passion and romance and delight. Anything less than that, not going to happen, babies. Quite happy to sit here, read fairy stories and unusual quirky stories, all alone in my little house with my little bird, with my lipstick and my Matryoshka dolly earrings that I transmuted into earrings, and my flower in my hair, going quietly mad into older age. It's not so bad. I've lived alone for 30 years. I don't fear being left alone for another 30. I'm not looking forward to it because it wasn't what I was hoping to achieve by this stage of life, but it won't be the worst thing that ever happened to me. Trust me on that one, babies. So anyway, in the meantime, I had a very good night last night with my CPAP device. For the first night in about 4 or 5 nights, I only had 1.7 events, which means I stopped breathing only 1.7 times an hour, which is pretty good, I had a night last week where I only stopped breathing 0.5, which was almost normal, like normal people. But then it went downhill dramatically. I don't know why that is. What triggered that? What caused that? It's just weird. So I'm guessing I'm going to have to be on CPAP for many, many years because I don't think it's going to go away. It's not looking like it's going to heal or go away, people of Earth. But I had a good night last night is what I'm saying. So technically I should be fully energised, except I'm still kind of tired from all the bad nights I had previously. Plus waking up at 3 o'clock on early Thursday morning, 3 a.m. bewitching out, wide awake. Couldn't get back to sleep till about nearly 4 a.m. So there was that. But I sometimes pick up on other people's energy too, so I wonder about that. It's a bit difficult to ask someone, were you awake at 3 a.m. thinking of me? Because I woke up feeling astonishingly, let me just put it delicately, healthy. Anyway, I had to Facebook for a while and kill time and put myself back to sleep. Oh, I almost raised one eyebrow there. Let's try that again. Better. Anyway, can't quite do it though, can I? What else can I not quite do? Many things. Many things. It's another beautiful day here in Brisbane, Australia, and I'm looking forward to the new mower man mowing the grass on Saturday because it's wild and woolly out there. Saturday is tomorrow, isn't it? Today's Friday, the 6th of December, so assuming that he comes and doesn't freak out at how massive my block of land is and continues on, does the job, I will feel quite contented and relieved by that and grateful because it stresses me out. So let us continue on with reading our wonderful American short stories. And today's story is by Herman Melville. I believe Herman Melville was the gentleman that wrote Moby Dick, which is a wonderful book. Highly recommend it. I often fantasise that I'm Captain Ahab standing in a wild, tempestuous bow of a ship lunging into eternity, but I would never kill a whale personally because I love whales. Certainly wouldn't kill a white whale because they're rare as white whales. But anyway, it's a fabulous story and almost kind of a paradox, with almost mythological proportions from that time frame when whaling was a big part of industry. People relied on whale oil for lighting and whale bones for scrimmage? Is that what they call it? Scrimmage? I think it is. And of course, the fat and the meat got eaten too. But the poor whales. I'm very fond of whales. They're wonderful creatures. Probably if I was swimming in the ocean and one just kind of casually swam over to me, I probably would freak out just by their sheer size. And I'm only a little hobbit, but whales and I. My friend Jared's, I can hear he's not even here, right? But I can hear Jared laughing his ass off because he knew I was going to go there. He knew it. He knew it before I did. But I was married to a whale. He spoke whale every day on a daily basis. How you going, Michael? Ooh! That was a day with potential. How's your day been, Michael? Ooh, that was a bad day. What shall we have for dinner tomorrow? It was usually him that obsessed over what we should have for dinner because he cooked the meals and he was obsessed about food to the point of absolute obsession. He'd wake me up at 6 o'clock in the morning. What do you want for dinner? Fuck, Michael, I haven't even opened my eyes on the world. I don't even know what I want for breakfast. No, I need to know what we're cooking for dinner. I don't care. Dinner is 12 hours away. No, I need to know. That was about the only time he enunciated, when he was frantically needing to know something. But the rest of the times, people would come into our shop to order food, my business, Chicken Express, rotisserie chickens. They'd get to the front counter and there'd be my husband lying there, ex-husband, lying there. What do you want? You can't speak to my customers like that. They're buying food to nourish their body, minds and spirits, to eat, to partake of. If you want to get repeat business, you have to speak to them like they're actually, people that are worthy of buying your wares. You malfeasant motherfucker. You're ruining my business. He was too. He did ruin my business when I left. Completely ruined it. But oh well, what do I care? He ruined himself in the process, didn't he? Wasn't that bright after all? Dull intellect psychopaths. They always damage themselves in the end. Remember that, people of Earth. Anyway, so he would just, how's your day, Michael? It's hot. So if I ever feel like a bit of a giggle and I get nostalgic for the good old days that were not good at all, in fact, quite horrific, I go to the Queensland Museum. And I stand under the blue whales I've got hanging there and I listen to the whale song. And they still sound more melodic and beautiful than my ex-husband. So there is that. We separated on the 2nd of January 1995. 30 years. I still carry that memory. 30 fucking... I wonder if he still moans and whines on... He had various pitches and tones. It got so bad that people would be like trying to communicate with him and they'd get this And they would turn to me smiling because they'd see this look on my face like this. Because I'd removed myself because it was like dealing with a fucking Neanderthal. A Neanderthal probably had more dialect than he had. It's true. I'm not being mean. This is the God's own truth. And so they would look at me, the person, and they'd smile and they'd go, "What did he just say?" And I'd translate. He said, "Business is bad. He's not feeling very well. It's been a very bad day. He hates everyone equally. What do you want? And when are you going?" And they'd look at me and they'd look at him and he'd go, "Pretty much." And they'd just walk off, scratching their head. And I'd look at him and I'd think, why am I even here? I'm reduced to translating monolithic, guttural moans and groans. And I was the one with the complex PTSD and the major depression, right? I was the one that should have done the knuckle dragging and the grunting and squatting and moaning and groaning. So I got myself out of that situation, and it was very, very dangerous and very fraught for a very, very long time, to the point where I was reduced to lying in bed for 20 hours a day, healing from not one, but 3 strangulations. But here we are, babies. I've rebuilt myself. It's taken me 30 fucking years, and it's astonishing. It's astonishing. And there's blue skies and clouds, and I'm happy. And tonight, in honour of my own thriving, I'll be doing my regular Friday night dance, and I'll be dancing tonight for my beautiful band, who I adore, equal footing with alter egos. I'll be dancing for Ramjet, and it's going to be beautiful and it's going to be powerful, because I actually slept last night, or breathed in my sleep last night. So yes, although to be fair, some of my most powerful nights have been nights when I'm actually, didn't sleep so great and had less oxygenation, and I just go into supercharge, overcompensating with this little short fat hobbit body that refuses to die or lie down or be vegetative or zombified, even though zombie is my favourite song, because I lived like that for decades. I don't want to return to that state ever again, unless, heaven forfend, I'm actually actively terminally dying. You won't knock me down again, boys, or your filthy little henchwomen that participated in all of that. Won't happen again. Won't happen again. There's blood in my eye just thinking about that. Don't even dream in your wildest nightmares of knocking me off my perch again. But every now and then, people give me a little tweak just to see how far they can go with it, and the consequences are eternal, babies. Right, so Hermann Melville, who went round there, who wrote Moby Dick. There'll be no grunting and monosyllabic diatribe or monologues or monolithic lost souls with no personality and no heart and no soul and no fucking couth. It'll be a fabulous story. I haven't read it before, don't know what it's about, so I'm about to find out. I had a fair idea what Young Goodman Brown and Sleepy Hollow and The Fall of the House of Usher were about, but this one I'm going in completely fresh, as most of you are, and let us be astonished by great American literature and people who actually had both wit and soul and heart and mind and some kind of sanguinosis, and to inspire us in darker, more lonelier times than these, babies. So the story is Bartleby. Bartleby. I am a rather elderly man. The nature of my avocations for the last 30 years has brought me into more than ordinary contact with what would seem an interesting and somewhat singular set of men of whom, as yet, nothing that I know of has ever been written. I mean the law copyists or scriveners. I have known very many of them, professionally and privately, and, if I pleased, could relate diverse histories at which good-natured gentlemen might smile and sentimental souls might weep. Posties be. I wonder if he noticed that I cut back the tree for him. I don't think he noticed. It doesn't matter. So, occupational health and safety hazard, I decided to do the right thing, even though no one ever fucking notices when Mama T does the right thing, by the way. But I know, so that's why I was like, feeling proud of myself. But I waive the biographies of all other scriveners for a few passages in the life of Bartleby, who was a scrivener, the strangest I ever saw or heard of. While of other law copyists, I might write the complete life of Bartleby, nothing of that sort can be done. I believe that no materials exist for a full and satisfactory biography of this man. It is an irreparable loss to literature. Bartleby was one of those beings of whom nothing is ascertainable except from the original sources, and in his case, those are very small. What my own astonished eyes saw of Bartleby, that is all I know of him, except, indeed, one vague report which will appear in the sequel. Ere introducing the scrivener as he first appeared to me, it is fit I make some mention of myself, my employer, my business, my chambers, and general surroundings, because some such description is indispensable to an adequate understanding of the chief character about to be presented. Imprimis, I am a man who, from his youth upwards, has been filled with a profound conviction that the easiest way of life is the best. It seems reasonable. Hence, though I belong to a profession proverbially energetic and nervous, even to turbulence at times, yet nothing of that sort have I ever suffered to invade my peace. I am one of those unambitious lawyers. Sounds like all the lawyers I ever had. Well, they were ambitious, all right. Took all my money. Did very little work. Took all my money. Never mind. I'm going to get triggered, aren't I? Shh. Just chill out, Tiny Arrows. It's a story. It's a story. I'm one of those unambitious lawyers who never addresses a jury or in any way draws down public applause, but in the cool tranquillity of a snug retreat, do a snug business among rich men's bonds and mortgages and title deeds. All who know me consider me an eminently safe man. That means boring, mundane, ordinary. Some woman craved that after a life of hellions and torment and ignominy. Just saying. The late John Jacob Astor, a personage little given to poetic enthusiasm, had no hesitation in pronouncing my first grand point to be prudence, my next method. Oh, I don't know if I'm coming down with a cold or if it's allergies, but I've been a bit sniffly for the last 3 days. I do not speak it in vanity, but simply record the fact that I was not unemployed in my profession by the late John Jacob Astor, the Astors, a name which I admit I love to repeat, for it hath a rounded and orbicular sound to it, and rings like unto bullion. I will freely add that I was not insensible to the late John Jacob Astor's good opinion. Wasn't he the one that, did he survive the Titanic? The Astor? I think he did, actually. Yes, was he one that, I'll have to Google it. But I'm pretty sure he survived the Titanic. Let me just check, because I like to be sure that I'm right. John Jacob Astor. No, he perished. He perished when she sank. He was the richest passenger aboard the Titanic and was thought to be among the richest people in the world at that time, with a net worth of roughly $87 million, equivalent to $2.75 billion in 2023 when he died. Okay, so who was I thinking of that survived it? Odd. Well, so I was wrong. He went down with the Titanic, which was a horrific event by anyone's standards. Rich man, poor man, those that went down, may you find rest and peace in the ever-loving arms of the Ein Sof All. Sometime prior to the period at which this little history begins, my avocations had been largely increased. The good old office, now extinct in the state of New York, of a Master in Chancery, had been conferred upon me. It was not a very arduous office, but very pleasantly remunerative. I seldom lose my temper, much more seldom indulge in dangerous indignation at wrongs and outrages. But I must be permitted to be rash here and declare that I consider the sudden and violent abrogation of the office of Master in Chancery by the new Constitution as a premature act, inasmuch as I had counted upon a life lease of the profits, whereas I only received those of a few short years. But this is by the way. My chambers were upstairs at number, and they put a hyphen there. They don't actually reveal the actual number, probably because he didn't want stalkers. Wall Street. At one end they looked upon the white wall of the interior of a spacious skylight shaft, penetrating the building from top to bottom. This view might have been considered rather tame than otherwise, deficient in what landscape painters call life. But if so, the view from the other end of my chambers offered at least a contrast, if nothing more. In that direction, my windows commanded an unobstructed view of a lofty brick wall, black by age and everlasting shade, which wall required no spyglass to bring out its lurking beauties, but, for the benefit of all near-sighted spectators, was pushed up to within 10 feet of my window panes. Owing to the great height of the surrounding buildings and my chambers being on the second floor, the interval between this wall and mine not a little resembled a huge square system. At the period just preceding the advent of Bartleby, I had 2 persons as copyists in my employment, and a promising lad as an office boy. First, Turkey; second, Nippers; third, Ginger Nut. It's not very nice names for all those characters, is it? By the gods. Well, we can assume that Ginger Nut had red hair. Nippers must have been small, and Turkey, I dread to think. Oh, you have to laugh. These may seem names alike of which are not usually found in the directory. In truth, they were nicknames, mutually conferred upon each other by my 3 clerks, and were deemed expressive of their respective persons or characters. Turkey was a short, pursy Englishman of about my own age, that is, somewhere not far from 60. In the morning, one might say, his face was of a fine, florid hue, but after 12 o'clock meridian, his dinner hour, it blazed like a grate full of Christmas coals, and continued blazing, but, as it were, with a gradual wane, till 6 o'clock p.m. or thereabouts, after which I saw no more of the proprietor of the face, which, gaining its meridian with the sun, seemed to set with it, to rise, culminate, and decline the following day, with the like regularity and undiminished glory. In other words, he was a boozer and was tippling all from lunchtime on, getting redder and redder in the face. Well, I'm assuming that anyway. It's an assumption, and when you make an assumption about someone, you make an ass out of both you and me. But I think that's what it's gently alluding to, changing the hues of his face. There are many singular coincidences I have known in the course of my life, not the least among which was the fact that, exactly when Turkey displayed his fullest beams from his red and radiant countenance, just then, too, at that critical moment, began the daily period when I considered his business capacities as seriously disturbed for the remainder of the 24 hours. Not that he was absolutely idle or averse to business then, far from it. The difficulty was he was apt to be altogether too energetic. There was a strange, inflamed, flurried, flighty recklessness of activity about him. Probably these days we'd call that ADHD, or hypomania, or bipolar, depending on how extreme it got at any given time in the space-time continuum. We can just label everybody as completely insane, as if nobody has any of their own identity at all, about what the DSM-4 5 is. What are we up to now? 5 pathologizes every 1 and 2. Just saying, babies. I am more than my pathology. Oh, I'm very cheeky today. It's because I have more oxygen and I'm functioning on 3 out of my 4, cylinders, and I'm sparking on all 4 channels. Zing a zing zing, ring a ding ding, ting a ting ting. The time is going to be dangerous tonight. Just saying. Maybe. Probably get tired by 9 o'clock and stay home. Oh, that could happen. It's been known to happen on occasion. I overly energise myself and get too excited about lots of nothing. He would be incautious in dipping his pen into his inkstand. It's a terrible thing back in the day because ink would go everywhere. It was, flow everywhere, damage all your paperwork. It's reckless. All his blots upon my documents were dropped there after 12 o'clock meridian. Told you he was a boozer, didn't I? Indeed, not only would he be reckless and sadly given to making blots in the afternoon, it's the blotty plot. The plot thickens with the blot. I'd be sitting there trying to decipher what the spirit messages were from all the blots, because I'm like that. People are there. Where were we? But some days he went further than just making blots. It was rather noisy. He works in an office. Do you know how boring it is to work in an office? When they're not trying to undermine you and lose you your job because they're bored, and boredom leads to mischief and anarchy and chaos and bullying and viciousness on the part of co-workers, sometimes your supervisors as well. Just saying. At such times too, his face flamed with augmented blazonry, as if cannon coal had been heaped on anthracite. He made an unpleasant racket with his chair, spilled his sandbox, and mending his pens, impatiently split them all to pieces and threw them on the floor in a sudden passion. I used to do that in the office too, because I'd get bored, people are there. I'd get fucking bored. It was soul-sucking watching the zombies and the soul-sucked ones pretend they actually cared about their jobs, because they did, because they had to put food on the table. But apart from that, it was atrophying, stymieing, and plain fucking shit show horror. Gotta find my fan people there. I thought it went behind. I thought it went. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Right. Tea goddess. Mama tea. I had this when I worked at Queensland Police Service Academy, which was the equivalent of being buried alive. It was that fucking boring. I bought this little dragon, because the movie Mulan came out, and there was a little dragon in the cartoon called Mushu, which I later named my cat Mushu. One of my cats Mushu. It was a cute little dragon, and when you pressed its tummy, it would say, "I am Mushu, my powers are beyond ordinary mortal imagination." So every time one of the police personnel went by in their uniform, going past through admin, on their way, probably picking up their pay slips or whatever they were doing. Often they were coming to Perth for me, quite frankly, which was creepy as fuck. But anyway, they'd come and have a kind of a look and keep going. And if I caught them giving me a bit more than a business orientated eye, I'd throw mushu at them, whack them with mushu. It was a little stuffed toy, it wouldn't hurt. And as soon as mushu would make contact with the cop, it would start yelling out, "I am Mushu! My powers are beyond ordinary imagination." I'd be like typing away. And of course the person would turn around and look. They'd look immediately at me because I'd be like this. And even my supervisor, Karen, she used to laugh. She'd go, "You did not." And I went, "I had to do it. Couldn't resist. Sorry. I'm dying here. That or death." "You're such an arsehole, Tanya." I went, "I know, but I'm a funny arsehole." She went, "That's why we tolerate it." Anyway, whoever it was would go, "Oh, I'll put you on a charge if you do that again." I'm like, "What? Because my powers are beyond ordinary mortal imagination. Is it my fault? Is it really my fault?" And even they'd be like, "Just walk out." And I'd have to go and retrieve mushu. I got away with that. Because they were all bored. Some of them just needed a good fuck, just saying. But don't, in those days I was in one of my celibate phases too, actually. So there was none of that happening. So this is what we did. Instead of expressing ourselves with our full, vibrant sexuality, we threw toys at people and made fun of things. Because you have to stay sane in the membrane. You really do. It's how I kept myself alive and sane. Anyway, that was a long time ago now. 24 years. Well, 24 and a half years ago. I'm living in the past. Like any dementia patient. I hope I don't get dementia. The memory is fresh as yesterday. That mushu going flying. A sweet little toy. Used to go home so astonishingly depressed I'd have to crawl into bed. That's how bad it was. Very, very bad. Anyway. One time I even rang that dead ghost that still haunts me to this day. I said, "David, I'm astonishingly depressed. Go home, take a Valium, Tanya." "Shut up, David, you're not a psychiatrist, you're a homeopath." He went, "You must be really in a bad way if you're calling me." I thought about it, I went, "My God, you're right. Can't quit the phone." It's true, I was in a bad way. Anyway, life has gone on since then. So where were we? We were lost at mending his pens, impatiently splitting them into pieces, threw them on the floor in a sudden passion, stood up and leaned over his table, boxing his papers about in a most indecorous manner, very sad to behold in an elderly man like him. It's not sad at all. It's quite understandable. I would have taken him out, said, "Dude, you've got to get out of this job, it's killing you. You need another vocation, or you just need to get a life." Nevertheless, as he was in many ways a most valuable person to me, and all the time before 12 o'clock meridian, was the quickest, steadiest creature too, accomplishing a great deal of work in a style not easily to be matched. I think I will make a ring today, because I feel like a loser telling you these tales of how acopic I was at work, and I'm not really acopic anymore, except that I can't work for other people. I have to do my own thing in my own time when the muse hits me, and that's why I'm unemployable, people. But it's a bit of a tragedy, but it's because of all the cumulative damage, which, was evident even back 25 years ago. Dear Goddess. So this afternoon I will make a ring, I think, I'm not too hot and bothered, because the muse is with me and I feel really excited today. Can you tell that I'm excited? What am I excited about? I've got nothing to be excited about. It's just an ordinary day in the space-time continuum. Apart from it being St. Nicolaus Day in Holland, it's just a day. But some days I get excited and I have to go with that vibe because those are unique and extraordinary days. So we shall see what we shall see, my darlings. Anyway, all before the 12 o'clock meridian, he was the quickest, steadiest creature too, accomplishing a great deal of work in a style not easily to be matched. So he was a morning person, which I am not. I am not a morning person. Never have been, never will be. For these reasons, I was willing to overlook his eccentricities, though indeed occasionally I remonstrated with him. I did this very gently, however, because though the civilest, nay, the blandest and most reverential of men in the morning, yet in the afternoon he was disposed, upon provocation, to be slightly rash with his tongue, in fact, insolent. Now, I'm laughing because that would have been a fair bit of Dutch courage too, babies. I'm onto this guy. Anyway, we all go. What you all have to do, what you have to do to get yourself through boring jobs. It's enough to send me into alcoholism too, but I didn't drink at all. I don't drink when I'm at work, except when we had, the occasional Christmas lunch or something like that. Maybe I should have drunk. I might have been more productive and got through my day better. Oh, dear goddess. Now, valuing his morning services as I did, and resolved not to lose them, yet at the same time made uncomfortable by his inflamed ways after 12 o'clock, and being a man of peace, unwilling by my admonitions to call forth unseemly retorts from him, I took upon me one Saturday noon, he was always worse on Saturdays, to hint to him very kindly that perhaps, now that he was growing old, it might be well to abridge his labours. In short, he need not come to my chambers after 12 o'clock, but, dinner over, had best go home to his lodgings and rest himself till tea time. But no, he insisted upon his afternoon devotions. His countenance became intolerably fervid, as he oratorically assured me, gesticulating with a long ruler at the other end of the room, that if his services in the morning were useful, how indispensable then in the afternoon. With submission, sir, said Turkey on this occasion, I consider myself your right-hand man. In the morning I but marshal excuse me, and deploy my colleagues, but in the afternoon I put myself at their head and gallantly charge the foe, thus, and he made a violent thrust with the ruler. But the blots, Turkey, intimated I. True, but with submission, sir. Behold these hairs. I am getting old. Surely, sir, a blot or two of a warm afternoon is not to be severely urged against grey hairs. Old age, even if it blot the page, is honourable. With submission, sir, we both are getting old. This appeal to my fellow feeling was hardly to be resisted. At all events, I saw that go he would not. So I made up my mind to let him stay, resolving, nevertheless, to see to it that, during the afternoon, he had to do with my less important papers. Nippers, the second on my list, was a whiskered, sallow, and upon the whole rather piratical-looking young man of about 25. I always deemed him the victim of two evil powers, ambition and indigestion. The ambition was evinced by a certain impatience of the duties of a mere copyist, an unwarrantable usurpation of strictly professional affairs, such as the original drawing up of legal documents. The indigestion seemed betokened in an occasional nervous testiness and grinning irritability, causing the teeth to audibly grind together over mistakes committed in copying, unnecessary maledictions, hissed rather than spoken in the heat of business, and especially by a continual discontent with the height of the table where he worked. Though of a very ingenious mechanical turn, Nippers could never get this table to suit him. He put chips under it, blocks of various sorts, bits of pasteboard, and at last went so far as to attempt an exquisite adjustment by final pieces of folded blotting paper. But no invention would answer. If, for the sake of easing his back, he brought the table lit at a sharp angle well up towards his chin, he brought the table lit at a sharp... Oh, wait a minute, I just said that. Well up towards his chin, and wrote there like a man using the steep roof of a Dutch house for his desk. Then he declared that it stopped the circulation in his arms. If now he lowered the table to his waistbands and stooped over it in writing, then there was a sore aching in his back. In short, the truth of the matter was, Nippers knew not what he wanted. Or, if he wanted anything, it was to be rid of a scrivener's table altogether. Among the manifestations of his diseased ambition was a fondness he had for receiving visits from certain ambiguous-looking fellows in seedy coats, whom he called his clients. Indeed, I was well aware that not only was he at times considerable of a ward politician, but he occasionally did a little business at the justices' courts, and was not unknown on the steps of the tombs. I have good reason to believe, however, that one individual who called upon him at my chambers, and who, with a grand air, he insisted was his client, was no other than a dun and the alleged title deed, a bill. But, with all his failings and the annoyances he caused me, Nippers, like his compatriot Turkey, was a very useful man to me, wrote a neat, swift hand, and when he chose, was not deficient in a gentlemanly sort of deportment. Added to this, he always dressed in a gentlemanly sort of way, and so, incidentally, reflected credit upon my chambers, whereas with respect to Turkey, I had much ado to keep him from being a reproach to me. Too hot, everyone has to go down by a degree or two, because it's too hot. Dear goddess. His clothes were apt to look oily and smelling of eating houses. He wore his pantaloons very loose and baggy in summer. His coats were execrable, his hat not to be handled. But while the hat was a thing of indifference to me, inasmuch as his natural civility and deference as a dependent Englishman always led him to doff it the moment he entered the room, yet his coat was another matter. Concerning his coats I reasoned with him, but with no effect. The truth was, I suppose, that a man with so small an income could not afford to sport such a lustrous face and a lustrous coat at one and the same time. As Nippers once observed, Turkey's money went chiefly for red ink. One winter day I presented Turkey with a highly respectable looking coat of my own, a padded grey coat of a most comfortable warmth, and which buttoned straight up from the knee to the neck. I thought Turkey would appreciate the favour and abate his rashness and obstreperousness of afternoons. But no, I'm really struggling, dear goddess. But no, I verily believe that buttoning himself up in so downy and blanket-like a coat had a pernicious effect upon him. Upon the same principle that too much oats are bad for horses. In fact, precisely as a rash restive horse is said to feel his oats, so Turkey felt his coat. It made him insolent. He was a man whom prosperity harmed. Nasty, 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 nasty. It's a bloody long story, by the way. Let me just see how many pages. Could be 2 videos worth. Indeed. Dear goodness. Should have checked that before, shouldn't I? Well, you have to excuse me one moment. A man whose prosperity harmed. I'll be back forthwith. We'll need to fast forward this video, just saying. My apologies in advance. Right, I'm back. I've bought some peanuts and a glass of water because I get thirsty. And off we go. We'll continue on. Dear Goddess. Though concerning the self-indulgent habits of Turkey, I had my own private surmises, yet touching Nippers, I was well persuaded that, whatever might be his faults in other respects, he was at least a temperate young man. But indeed, nature herself seemed to have been his vintner, and at his birth charged him so thoroughly with an irritable, brandy-like disposition that all subsequent potations were needless. When I consider how, amid the stillness of my chambers, Nippers would sometimes impatiently rise from his seat and, stooping over his table, spread his arms wide apart, seize the whole desk, and move it and jerk it with a grim and grinding motion on the floor, as if the table were a perverse voluntary agent, intent on thwarting and vexing him, I plainly perceived that for Nippers, brandy and water were altogether superfluous. It was fortunate for me that, owing to its peculiar cause, indigestion, the irritability and consequent nervousness of Nippers was mainly observable in the morning, while in the afternoon he was comparatively mild. So that Turkey's paroxysms only coming on about 12 o'clock, I never had to do with their eccentricities at one time. Their fits relieved each other like guards. When Nippers was on, Turkey's was off, and vice versa. This was a good natural arrangement under the circumstances. Ginger Nut, the third on my list, was a lad some 12 years old. His father was a car man, ambitious of seeing his son on the bench instead of a cart before he died. Wanted the best for his son. I get that. A good father or mother always wants the best for their kids. So he sent him to my office as student at law, errand boy, cleaner and sweeper at the rate of $1 a week. He had a little desk to himself, but he did not use it much. Upon inspection, the drawer exhibited a great array of the shells of various sorts of nuts. Synchronicity, I'm eating peanuts. Indeed, to this quick-witted youth, the whole noble science of the law was contained in a nutshell. Not the least among the employments of Ginger Nut, as well as one which he discharged with the most alacrity, was his duty as cake and apple purveyor for Turkey and Nippers. Copying law papers being proverbially a dry, husky sort of business, my two scriveners were fain to moisten their mouths very often with Spitzenbergs, to be had in the numerous stalls nigh the custom house and post office. Also they sent Ginger Nut very frequently for that peculiar cake, small, round, flat, and very spicy, after which he had been named by them. Of a cold morning, when business was but dull, Turkey would gobble up scores of these cakes as if they were mere wafers. Indeed, they sell them at the rate of 6 or 8 for a penny, the scrape of his pen blending with the crunching of the crisp particles in his mouth. Of all the firing, I just needed that bit of salt actually, afternoon blunders and flurried rashness of turkey was his once moistening a ginger cake between his lips and clapping it onto a mortgage for a seal. I came within an ace of dismissing him then, but he mollified me by making an oriental bow and saying, with submission, "Sir, 'twas generous of me to find you in stationery of my own account." I love this guy. He doesn't give a fuck. I just love him. He's a man after my own heart. Carry on like that, lad, you'll be unemployable like me in no time. Chose consequences of a different kind, languishing in housing commission and a disability pension as I do, eating peanuts, laughing in the face of my own madness, bemoaning the fact that I'll never be a supermodel and I'll never have true love because I'm poor and I'm obnoxious, and I kind of love it now. Got used to it after 30 years. What can I say? It is what it is, people are there. But tonight I will dance. Tonight I will be the delight of millionaires and paupers alike, dancing my wild, triumphant, defiant, rebellious, at times obnoxious dance, living my best life while taking no shit, the only way to fly. Now, my original business, that of a conveyancer and title hunter and drawer up of recondite documents of all sorts. Sorry, I know that's a bit obscene. My apologies. It wasn't intentional. It's the salt. It's the salt. I had a lot of sweet things. I made this Florentine thing from this recipe in the back of a packet. It looked sus to me, and it was sus. It's sickly sweet, not as nice as I thought. And the chocolate I used was meant to be used for chocolate chips, so it went all claggy and horrible. But I'll have to eat it now that I've made it. Dear goddess. All the lie, eating a biscuit type Florentine that I don't particularly like and I'm not proud of because it didn't turn out exactly how I wanted. I'll have to find a better recipe. It's a waste of good ingredients. But anyway, the crows took off with the foil that I had, it sitting in. They went off with it. They were quite happy with that. I don't think they would have eaten the foil though. They were just probably gathering up the shiny foil for their nest as they do. Let me go back to that paragraph. Now my original business, that of a conveyancer and title hunter and drawer up of recondite documents of all sorts, was considerably increased by receiving the master's office. There was now great work for scriveners. Not only must I push the clerks already with me, but I must have additional help. In answer to my advertisement, a motionless young man one morning stood upon my office threshold, the door being open, for it was summer. I can see that figure now, pallidly neat, pitiably respectable, incurably forlorn. It was Bartleby. After a few words touching his qualifications, I engaged him, glad to have among my corps of copyists a man of so singularly sedate an aspect, which I thought might operate beneficially upon the flighty temper of Turkey and the fiery one of Nippers. I should have stated before that ground glass folding doors divided my premises into two parts, one of which was occupied by my scriveners, the other by myself. According to my humour, I threw open these doors or closed them. I resolved to assign Bartleby a corner by the folding doors, but on my side of them, so as to have this quiet man within easy call in case any trifling thing was to be done. I placed his desk close up to a small side window in that part of the room, a window which originally had afforded a lateral view of certain grimy backyards and bricks, but which, owing to subsequent erections, commanded at present no view at all, though it gave some light. Within 3 feet of the panes was a wall, and the light came down from far above between two lofty buildings, as from a very small opening in a dome. Still further to a satisfactory arrangement, I procured a high green folding screen, which might entirely isolate Bartleby from my sight, though not remove him from my voice, and thus, in a manner, privacy and society were conjoined. At first, Bartleby did an extraordinary quantity of writing, as if long famishing for something to copy. He seemed to gorge himself on my documents. There was no pause for digestion. He ran a day and night line, copying by sunlight and by candlelight. I should have been quite delighted with his application had he been cheerfully industrious, but he wrote on silently, palely, and mechanically. It is, of course, an indispensable part of the scrivener's business to verify the accuracy of his copy, word by word. Where there are 2 or more scriveners in an office, they assist each other in this examination, one reading from the copy, the other holding the original. It is a very dull, wearisome, and lethargic affair. I can readily imagine that to some sanguine temperaments it would be altogether intolerable. For example, I cannot credit that the meddlesome poet Byron would have contentedly sat down with Bartleby to examine a law document of, say, 500 pages, closely written in a crimpy hand. Now and then, in the haste of business, it had been my habit to assist in comparing some brief document myself, calling Turkey or Nippers for this purpose. One object I had in placing Bartleby so handy to me behind the screen was to avail myself of his services on such trivial occasions. It was on the 3rd day, I think, of his being with me, and before any necessity had arisen for having his own writing examined, that, being much hurried to complete a small affair I had in hand, I abruptly called to Bartleby. In my haste and natural expectancy of instant compliance, I sat with my head bent over the original on my desk, and my right hand sideways and somewhat nervously extended with the copy, so that, immediately upon emerging from his retreat, Bartleby might snatch it and proceed to business without the least delay. In this very attitude did I sit when I called to him, rapidly stating what it was I wanted him to do, namely to examine a small paper with me. Imagine, my surprise, nay, my consternation, when, without moving from his privacy, Bartleby, in a singularly mild, firm voice, replied, "I would prefer not to." I sat a while in perfect silence, rallying my stunned faculties. Immediately it occurred to me that my ears had deceived me, or Bartleby had entirely misunderstood my meaning. I repeated my request in the clearest tone I could assume, but in quite as clear a one came the previous reply. "I would prefer not to." "Prefer not to?" echoed I, rising in high excitement and crossing the room with a stride. "What do you mean? Are you moonstruck? I want you to help me compare this sheet here. Take it." And I thrust it towards him. "I would prefer not to," said he. I looked at him steadfastly. His face was leanly composed, his grey eye dimly calm. Not a wrinkle of agitation rippled him. Had there been the least uneasiness, anger, impatience, or impertinence in his manner, in other words, had there been anything ordinarily human about him, doubtless I would have violently dismissed him from my premises. But, as it was, I should have as soon thought of turning my pale plaster of Paris bust of Cicero out of doors. I stood gazing at him a while, as he went on with his own writing, and then reseated myself at my desk. This is very strange, thought I. What had one best do? But my business hurried me. I concluded to forget the matter for the present, reserving it for my future leisure. So, calling Nippers from the other room, the paper was speedily examined. A few days after this, Bartleby concluded 4 lengthy documents, being quadruplicates of a week's testimony taken before me in my High Court of Chancery. It became necessary to examine them. It was an important suit, and great accuracy was imperative. Having all things arranged, I called Turkey, Nippers, and Ginger Nut from the next room, meaning to place the 4 copies in the hands of my 4 clerks, while I should read from the original. Accordingly, Turkey, Nippers, and Ginger Nut had taken their seats in a row, each with his document in his hand, when I called to Bartleby to join in this interesting group. "Bartleby, quick, I am waiting." I heard a low scrape of his chair legs on the uncarpeted floor, and soon he appeared standing at the entrance of his hermitage. "What is wanted?" said he mildly. I heard wait a minute. The copies, said I hurriedly. "We are going to examine them. There," and I held towards him the 4th quadruplicate. "I would prefer not to," he said, and gently disappeared behind the screen. For a few moments I was turned into a pillar of salt, standing at the head of my seated column of clerks. Recovering myself, I advanced towards the screen and demanded the reason for such extraordinary conduct. Why do you refuse? I would prefer not to. With any other man, I should have flown outright into a dreadful passion, scorned all further words, and thrust him ignominiously from my presence. But there was something about Bartleby that not only strangely disarmed me, but in a wonderful manner touched and disconcerted me. I began to reason with him. These are your own copies we are about to examine. Is it labour-saving to you, because one examination will answer for your full papers? It is common usage. Every copyist is bound to help examine his copy. Is it not so? Will you not speak? Answer. I prefer not to, he replied in a flute-like tone. It seemed to me that, while I had been addressing him, he carefully resolved every statement that I made, fully comprehended the meaning, and could not gainsay the irresistible conclusion. But, at the same time, some paramount consideration prevailed with him to reply as he did. You are decided, then, not to comply with my request, a request made according to common usage and common sense. He briefly gave me to understand that on that point my judgment was sound. Yes, his decision was irreversible. It is not seldom the case that, when a man is browbeaten in some unprecedented and violently unreasonable way, he begins to stagger in his own plainest faith. He begins, as it were, vaguely to surmise that, wonderful as it may be, all the justice and all the reason is on the other side. Accordingly, if any disinterested persons are present, he turns to them for some reinforcement of his own faltering mind. Turkey, said I, what do you think of this? Am I not right? With submission, sir, said Turkey, in his blandest tone. I think that you are. Nippers, said I, what do you think of it? I think I should kick him out of the office. The reader of nice perceptions will here perceive that, it being morning, Turkey's answer is couched in polite and tranquil terms, but Nippers replies in ill-tempered ones. Or, to repeat a previous sentence, Nippers' ugly mood was on duty and Turkey's was off. Ah, sweet, innit? Ginger nut, said I, willing to enlist the smallest suffrage in my behalf. What do you think of it? I think, sir, he's a little loony, replied Ginger Nut with a grin. You hear what they say, said I, turning towards the screen. Come forth and do your duty. But he vouchsafed no reply. I pondered a moment in sore perplexity, but once more business hurried me. I determined again to postpone the consideration of this dilemma to my future leisure. With a little trouble, we made out to examine the papers without Bartleby, though at every page or two, Turkey deferentially dropped his opinion that this proceeding was quite out of the common, while Nippers, twitching in his chair with a dyspeptic nervousness, ground out between his set teeth occasional hissing maledictions against the stubborn oaf behind the screen. Sorry, just momentarily lost my. Alright. And for his, Nippus's part, this was the first and the last time he would do another man's business without pay, which is fair enough. Meanwhile, Bartleby sat in his hermitage, oblivious to everything but his own peculiar business there. Some days passed, the scrivener being employed upon another lengthy work. His late remarkable conduct led me to regard his ways narrowly. I observed that he never went to dinner, indeed that he never went anywhere. As yet I had never, of my personal knowledge, known him to be outside of my office. He was a perpetual sentry in the corner. At about 11 o'clock, though, in the morning, I noticed that Ginger Nut would advance toward the opening in Bartleby's screen, as if silently beckoned thither by a gesture invisible to me where I sat. The boy would then leave the office, jingling a few pence, and reappear with a handful of ginger nuts, which he delivered in the hermitage, receiving 2 of the cakes for his trouble. He lives then on ginger nuts, thought I, never eats a dinner, properly speaking. He must be a vegetarian then. But no, he never eats vegetables. He eats nothing but ginger nuts. My mind then ran on in reveries concerning the probable effects upon the human constitution of living entirely on ginger nuts. Ginger nuts are so called because they contain ginger as one of their peculiar constituents, and the final flavouring one. Now, what was ginger? A hot, spicy thing. Was Bartleby hot and spicy? Not at all. Ginger then had no effect upon Bartleby. Probably he preferred it should have none. Nothing so aggravates an earnest person as a passive resistance. If the individual so resisted be of a not inhumane temper, and the resisting one perfectly harmless in his passivity, then, in the better moods of the former, he will endeavour charitably to construe to his imagination what proves impossible to be solved by his judgment. Even so, for the most part, I regarded Bartleby and his ways. Poor fellow, thought I, he means no mischief. It is plain he intends no insolence. His aspect sufficiently evinces that his eccentricities are involuntary. He is useful to me. I can get along with him. If I turn him away, the chances are he will fall in with some less indulgent employer, and then he will be rudely treated and perhaps driven forth miserably to starve, which would have happened to me back in the day before social welfare became such a life-saving attribute as it has been in my existence. The queens of their own destiny. We're a rare breed and a rare bird, just saying. Oops. On that note, I'll have another peanut. It's a peanut gallery. Do you know who I could have been? Had people actually respected my bizarre genius, my eccentricities, and my defiance. Alas and alack. I need to water my dahlia. She's really struggling. Really struggling. She's all limp. We had so much rain and she's limp again. Oh, bless. I hope she doesn't die on me. She was doing so well. and to rush out and give her some water. My darling Dahlia. It's very hot out there. It's 28 degrees right now. Where was I? Yes, worrying about starving while eating peanuts in the peanut gallery. Yes, here I can cheaply purchase a delicious self-approval. To befriend Bartleby, to humour him in his strange wilfulness, will cost me little or nothing, while I lay up in my soul, which will eventually prove a sweet morsel for my conscience. But this mood was not invariable with me. The passiveness of Bartleby sometimes irritated me. I felt strangely goaded on to encounter him in new opposition, to elicit some angry spark from him answerable to my own. But indeed, I might as well have essayed to strike fire with my knuckles against a bit of Windsor soap. But one afternoon, the evil impulse in me mastered me, and the following little scene ensued. Bartleby, said I, when those papers are all copied, I will compare them with you. I would prefer not to. How? Surely you do not mean to persist in that mulish vagary? No answer. I threw open the folding doors nearby, and, turning upon Turkey and Nippers, exclaimed, Bartleby, a second time, says, he won't examine his papers. What do you think of it, Turkey? I think I'm going to have an asthma attack, is what I think. But not. It was afternoon, be it remembered. Turkey sat glowing like a brass boiler, his bald head steaming, his hands reeling among his blotted papers. Think of it, roared Turkey. I think I'll just step behind his screen and black his eyes for him. So saying, Turkey rose to his feet and threw his arms into a pugilistic position. He was hurrying away to make good his promise when I detained him, alarmed at the effect of incautiously rousing Turkey's combativeness after dinner. Sit down, Turkey, said I, and hear what Nippers has to say. What do you think, Nippers? Would I not be justified in immediately dismissing Bartleby? I'm telling you, they all need to go and get laid. They are that fucking bored. I'm bored just reading it. It's doing my head on, people. Reminds me of the good old days as an office Sharon, not giving a fuck. Dear goddess. Excuse me, that is for you to decide, sir. I think his conduct quite unusual and indeed unjust as regards Turkey and myself. But it may only be a passing whim. Ah, exclaimed I, you have strangely changed your mind, then. You speak very gently of him now. All beer, cried Turkey. Gentleness is effects of beer. Nippers and I dined together today. You see how gentle I am, sir. Shall I go and black his eyes? Could have sworn I saw someone walk past my gate, but there's no one there. Well, 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 well. You refer to Bartleby, I suppose. No, not today, Turkey, I replied. Pray, put up your fists. I closed the doors and again advanced towards Bartleby. I felt additional incentives tempting me to my fate. I burned to be rebelled against again. I remembered that Bartleby never left the office. How can you do that? Stay in an office day and night? Are you that soul-sucked that you have no imagination? You just want to sit there like a vegetative zombie state. His only rebellion is refusing to copy papers. Oh, you know what? Bless, give him that much. Fuck it. Dear goddess, what am I even saying? It's just like I refuse to make love to treacherous, traitorous, demonic, murderous, rapey, filthy, disingenuous men. Not totally stupid. Finally I learnt after years and years of ignominy. The concept of even launching into a full-blown, sexual, passionate, romantic love partnership with anyone is deeply, deeply terrifying and kind of horrifying. The whole concept. This is what happens when you live alone for 30 years and you haven't been loved and respected and honouring, sweet, romantic, genuine ways. You get a bit weird and prickly and non-compliant with everything. Anyway, where were we? He remembered that Bartleby never left the office. He was a very good worker, our Bartleby, apart from his one small defiance. Bartleby, said I. Ginger Nut is away. Just step around to the post office, won't you? 'Twas but a 3 minutes' walk. And see if there is anything for me. I would prefer not to. You will not? I prefer not. There's great power in those words. Will you make sweet love to me, O Tanya, my Tanya? It's a very lovely offer, but I prefer not to. Will you shackle yourself to me for the rest of eternity, O my Tanya, my beloved, my beautiful wife? I prefer not to. Oh well, we can have a bit of fun with this, can't we? I staggered to my desk and sat there in a deep study. My blind inveteracy returned. Was there any other thing in which I could procure myself to be ignominiously repulsed by this lean, penniless, white, my hired clerk? What added thing is there, perfectly reasonable, that he will be sure to refuse to do? developing a list of things he now refuses to do. First it was copying papers or reading copy, and now it's refuses to go to the post office. Bartleby, oh Bartleby, oh Bartleby, he yells out. Bartleby! No answer. Bartleby! In a louder tone. No answer. Bartleby! I roared. Like a very ghost, agreeably to the laws of magical invocation, at the third summons, he appeared at the entrance of his hermitage. Go to the next room and tell Nippers to come to me. I prefer not to, he respectfully and slowly said, and mildly disappeared. Very good, Bartleby, said I, in a quiet sort of serenely severe, self-possessed tone, intimating the unalterable purpose of some terrible retribution very close at hand. At the moment I half intended something of the kind, but upon the whole, as it was drawing towards my dinner hour, I thought it best to put on my hat and walk home for the day, suffering much from perplexity and distress of mind. Shouldn't have done that, motherfucker. Bartleby's got you good now. He owns your ass. He's got you good. But shh, mustn't ruin the story, must we? Shall I acknowledge it? The conclusion of this whole business was that it soon became a fixed fact of my chambers that a pale young scrivener by the name of Bartleby had a desk there, that he copied for me at the usual rate of 4 cents a folio, 100 words, but he was permanently exempt from examining the work done by him, that duty being transferred to Turkey and Nippers, out of compliment, doubtless, to the superior acuteness. Moreover, said Bartleby was never on any account to be dispatched on the most trivial errand of any sort, and that even if entreated to take upon him such a matter, it was generally understood that he would prefer not to. In other words, that he would refuse point blank. It's a bit like my sister when she was working as a lawyer, as a young woman. Her boss asked her to go and get lunch, as if she was a mere receptionist or secretary. So she preferred not to too. Oh, was there hell to pay? Absolute hell. She said, I am not a mere secretary. How very dare you, she said. I'm a qualified solicitor. In fact, I qualified in only recent years, so my erudition education is far more advanced than yours would have been when you graduated. The chutzpah of it. I've got to admire her for that, though. That she's got a point. Trying to demean the little woman because she's a female solicitor. So anyway, he bowed to her far superior erudition and arrogance, in her case narcissism too. She went on to order the most expensive leather chair and the most expensive desk and other furnishings for her office of the most exquisite quality, costing, the partners a fair bit of money, and then she quit. Passive resistance is a thing in my family, people of Earth. When we're not passively resistant, we're aggressively fomenting revolutions. Well, I am in my dreaming. Oh, the revolutions we could have had if everybody was not so compliant with the draconian COVIDian epoch, but they were all brainwashed and conditioned to comply. Do you realise what a fabulous couch I could be sitting on right now if you'd all listened to me and obeyed my whimsy and my revolutionary spirit. But anyway, my sister, I was proud of her for that actually. It was a long, long time ago. She was still quite a young woman, when she still had fire in her belly and a little bit of fucking nous and courage and that feminist spirit that says, hell no, I prefer not to. As days passed on, I became considerably reconciled to Bartleby. His steadfastness, his freedom from all dissipation, his incessant industry, except when he chose to throw himself into a standing reverie behind his screen, his great stillness, his unalterableness of demeanour under all circumstances, made him a valuable acquisition. One prime thing was this: he was always there, first in the morning, continually through the day, and the last at night. I had a singular confidence in his honesty. I felt my most precious papers perfectly safe in his hands. Sometimes, to be sure, I could not, for the very soul of me, avoid falling into sudden spasmodic passions with him, for it was exceeding difficult to bear in mind all the time those strange peculiarities, privileges, and unheard of exemptions, forming the tacit stipulations on Bartleby's part under which he remained in my office. Now and then, in the eagerness of dispatching pressing business, I would inadvertently summon Bartleby in a short, rapid tone to put his finger, say, on the incipient tie of a bit of red tape with which I was about compressing some papers. Of course, from behind the screen, the usual answer, I prefer not to, was sure to come. And then, how could a human creature with the common infirmities of our nature refrain from bitterly exclaiming upon such perverseness, such unreasonableness? However, every added repulse of the sort which I received only tended to lessen the probability of my repeating the inadvertence. Hence, it must be said that according to the custom of most legal gentlemen occupying chambers in densely populated law buildings, there were several keys to my door. One was kept by a woman residing in the attic, which person weekly scrubbed and daily swept and dusted my apartments. Someone who dusts daily. It could come in handy. I know, I'm incorrigible people. Quentin Crisp and I. Of course, he's eminently wittier and funnier than I too. Also happens to be gay, but He and I feel the same way about dust. I'll have to deal with it soon. I will. I'll have to deal with it. Another was kept by Turkey for convenience sake. The keys we're talking about. The third I sometimes carried in my own pocket. The fourth I knew not who had. Now, one Sunday morning I happened to go to Trinity Church to hear a celebrated preacher, and finding myself rather early on the ground, I thought I would walk around to my chambers for a while. Luckily, I had my key with me, but upon applying it to the lock, sorry, I'm just a little bit distracted by something here. Just one moment. One moment, my darlings. Mama T's having a moment. It happens from time to time. My little moments. Anyway, where was I? He's at church. He's about to apply it to the lock. Here we are. I found it resisted by something inserted from the inside. Dear Goddess. Dear Goddess.
Esto es lo que he hecho hoy en la escuela de joyería. Esto es lo que he hecho hoy en la...
Silversmithing and rock and roll is on my mind. I need to get busy with my ring tonight to this afternoon. Maybe tomorrow. I'll be too tired after reading this story. No, this afternoon I'll have to set myself a challenge. I don't want to be like Bartleby, forever preferring not to and doing nothing, going nowhere. But on the other hand, that too is a choice. Sometimes I wonder if I've gone quite mad, actually. But if I've gone quite mad, it's a lovely kind of madness. Right, let's read that sentence again, because Mama T is lost in the peanut gallery and outer space with that look upon her face of pure mischief and delight. Maybe I'll meet someone tonight that takes my fancy, but not likely. Let's not get too OTT. Luckily I had my key with me, but upon applying it to the lock I found it resisted by something inserted from the inside. Quite surprised, I called out, when to my consternation a key was turned from within, and thrusting his lean visage at me, and holding the door ajar, the apparition of Bartleby appeared in his shirt sleeves, and otherwise in a strangely tattered dishabille. Dishabille? Dishabille? Deshabille? I've got to Google how to pronounce that. Dishabille. You ready, people of Earth? Let's go, babies. Oh. Do we have to have the fucking ad? For fuck's sake.
We are looking at how to pronounce this word as well as how to say more confusing vocabulary, including from French, that many mispronounce.
Hurry up.
So to stay tuned to the channel.
Time is money.
How do you say it? Déshabillé.
Déshabillé.
Déshabillé. For reference in French, it is said as déshabillé, meaning partially clad or scantily dressed. Also,
Déshabillé. Right. Because you've got to have it right, people there. En français, je ne sais quoi. Tout l'amour. Déshabillé. But not today. I prefer not to. Don't get too excited, boys. So, here we have it. And otherwise in a strangely tattered déshabillé, meaning partially dressed, saying quietly that he was sorry. But he was deeply engaged just then and preferred not admitting me at present. Why would a law clerk be partially dressed while going about his business? Didn't have internet porn in those days either, boys. What was he doing in there? Like, really, what was he doing in there? I would have fired him on the spot. It's starting to annoy even me. I'm a very tolerant mama T most of the time. Unless I'm in a bad temper about something. But anyway, in a brief word or two, he moreover added that perhaps I had better walk around the block 2 or 3 times, and by that time he would probably have concluded his affairs. Now, the utterly unsurmised appearance of Bartleby tenanting my law chambers of a Sunday morning with his cadaverously gentlemanly nonchalance, yet withal firm and self-possessed, had such a strange effect upon me that incontinently I slunk away from my own door and did as desired. The man's got no balls at all. He's been completely neutered. He's a eunuch. Bartleby is the king of that office. I'm starting to love Bartleby, although he's a bit of an arsehole, isn't he? I have a fondness for arseholes, though. It's my anarchistic revolutionary streak. Unless they're trying to ply their trade with me. Bing, bam, boom, babies. But not without sundry twinges of impotent rebellion against the mild effrontery of this unaccountable scrivener. Only twinges? After all this time you only have twinges of impotent rebellion? He'd be twanging so far off the Richter scale on the end of my foot by now. By the goddess. Anyway, just see the funny side of it. It's hilarious when you think about it. Indeed, it was his wonderful mildness, chiefly, which not only disarmed me, but unmanned me, as it were. For I consider that one, for the time, is a sort of unmanned when he tranquilly permits his hired clerk to dictate to him and order him away from his own premises. Furthermore, I was full of uneasiness as to what Bartleby could possibly be doing in my office, in his shirt sleeves, and in an otherwise dismantled condition of a Sunday morning. Was anything amiss going on? Nay, that was out of the question. It was not to be thought of for a moment that Bartleby was an immoral person. But what could he be doing there? Copying? Nay, again, whatever might be his eccentricities, Bartleby was an eminently decorous person. He would be the last man to sit down at his desk in any state approaching to nudity. Besides, it was Sunday, and there was something about Bartleby that forbade the supposition that he would by any secular occupation violate the proprieties of the day. Nevertheless, my mind was not pacified, and full of a restless curiosity, at last I returned to the door. Without hindrance, I inserted my key, opened it, and entered. Bartleby was not to be seen. I looked round anxiously, peeped behind his screen, but it was very plain that he was gone. Upon more closely examining the place, I surmised that for an indefinite period Bartleby must have ate, dressed, and slept in my office, and that too without plate, mirror, or bed. The cushioned seat of a rickety old sofa in one corner bore the faint impress of a lean reclining form. Rolled away under his desk, I found a blanket. Under the empty grate, a blacking box and brush. On a chair, a tin basin with soap and a ragged towel. In a newspaper, a few crumbs of ginger nuts and a morsel of cheese. Yes, thought I, it is evident enough that Bartleby has been making his home here, keeping bachelor's hall all by himself. Immediately then the thought came sweeping across me. What miserable friendlessness and loneliness are here revealed. I'm not laughing at that, I'm laughing at some other thought that crossed my mind before that. Dear Goddess. Mama too, Britannia, is emanating. I have to put myself back to bed when I finish this story. Calm my fucking farm. His poverty is great, but his solitude, how horrible! Think of it, of a Sunday. Wall Street is deserted as Petra, and every night of every day it is an emptiness. This building too, which of weekdays hums with industry and life, at nightfall echoes with sheer vacancy, and all through Sunday is forlorn. And here Bartleby makes his home, sole spectator of a solitude which he has seen all populous, a sort of innocent and transformed Marius brooding among the ruins of Carthage. Dear Goddess, how much more of the story has it got? It's going to be a 2-video one, I think. Or I have to read faster. I didn't check before we began how long the story was, so please forgive me. For the first time in my life, a feeling of overpowering, stinging melancholy seized me. Before I had never experienced aught but a not unpleasing sadness. The bond of a common humanity now drew me irresistibly to gloom, a fraternal melancholy, for both I and Bartleby were sons of Adam. I remembered the bright silks and sparkling faces I had seen that day, in gala trim, swan-like sailing down the Mississippi of Broadway, and I contrasted them with the pallid copyist and thought to myself, ah, happiness courts the light, so we deem the world as gay, but misery hides aloof, so we deem that misery there is none. These sad fancyings, chimeras, doubtless, of a sick and silly brain, led on to other and more special thoughts concerning the eccentricities of Bartleby. Presentiments of strange discoveries hovered round me. The scrivener's pale form appeared to me laid out among uncaring strangers in its shivering winding sheet. Suddenly I was attracted by Bartleby's closed desk, the key in open sight left in the lock. I mean no mischief, seek the gratification of no heartless curiosity, thought I. Besides, the desk is mine, and its contents too, so I will make bold to look within. Everything was methodically arranged, the papers smoothly placed. The pigeonholes were deep, and removing the files of documents, I groped into their recesses. Presently I felt something there and dragged it out. It was an old bandana handkerchief, heavy and knotted. I opened it and saw it was a savings bank. I now recalled all the quiet mysteries which I had noted in the man. I remembered that he never spoke but to answer, that though at intervals he had considerable time to himself, yet I had never seen him reading, no, not even a newspaper. That for long periods he would stand looking out at his pale window behind the screen, upon the dead brick wall. I was quite sure he never visited any refectory or eating house, while his pale face clearly indicated that he never drank beer like Turkey, or tea and coffee even like other men, that he never went anywhere in particular that I could learn, never went out for a walk, unless indeed that was the case at present, that he had declined telling who he was or whence he came, or whether he had any relatives in the world, that though so thin and pale, he never complained of ill health, and more than all, I remembered a certain unconscious air of pallid, how shall I call it, of pallid haughtiness, say, or rather an austere reserve about him, which had positively awed me into my tame compliance with his eccentricities, which I had feared to ask him to do the slightest incidental thing for me, even though I might know from his long continued motionlessness that behind his screen he must be standing in one of those dead wall reveries of his. Resolving all these things, and coupling them with the recently discovered fact that he made my office his constant abiding place and home, and not forgetful of his morbid moodiness, revolving all these things, a prudential feeling began to steal over me. My first emotions had been those of pure melancholy and sincerest pity. But just in proportion as the forlornness of Bartleby grew and grew to my imagination, did that same melancholy merge into fear, that fear into repulsion. So true it is, and so terrible too, that up to a certain point, the thought or sight of misery enlists our best affections, but in certain cases, beyond that point, it does not. They err who would assert that, invariably, this is owing to the inherent selfishness of the human heart. I need a drink now, people of Earth. I needed that. Walk and talk, chew and talk, read and talk. It's a psychedelic dreamer's magic carpet ride. It rather proceeds from a certain hopelessness of remedying excessive and organic ill. To a sensitive being, pity is not seldom pain, and when at last it is perceived that such pity cannot lead to effectual succour, common sense bids the soul be rid of it. What I saw that morning persuaded me that the scrivener was the victim of innate and incurable disorder. I might give alms to his body, but his body did not pain him. 'Twas his soul that suffered, and his soul I could not reach. I did not accomplish the purpose of going to Trinity Church that morning. Somehow the things I had seen disqualified me for the time from church going. I walked homeward, thinking what I would do with Bartleby. Finally I resolved upon this. I would put certain calm questions to him the next morning touching his history, etc., and if he declined to answer them openly and unreservedly, and I supposed he would prefer not, then to give him a $20 bill over and above whatever I might owe him, and tell him his services were no longer required, and that if in any other way I could assist him, I would be happy to do so, especially if he desired to return to his native place, wherever that might be. I would willingly help to defray the expenses. Moreover, if after reaching home he found himself at any time in want of aid, a letter from him would be sure of a reply. The next morning came. "Bartleby," said I, gently calling to him behind his screen. No reply. "Bartleby," said I in a still gentler tone, "come here. I am not going to ask you to do anything you would prefer not to do. I simply wish to speak to you." Upon this he noiselessly slid into view. "Will you tell me, Bartleby, where you were born?" "I would prefer not to." "Will you tell me anything about yourself?" "I would prefer not to." "But what reasonable objection can you have to speak to me? I feel friendly towards you." He did not look at me while I spoke, but kept his glance fixed upon my bust of Cicero, which, as I then sat, was directly behind me, some 6 inches above my head. "What is your answer, Bartleby?" said I, after waiting a considerable time for a reply, during which his countenance remained immovable, only there was the faintest conceivable tremor of the white, attenuated mouth. "At present I prefer to give no answer," he said. and retired into his hermitage. It was rather weak in me, I confess, but his manner on this occasion nettled me. Not only did there seem to lurk in it a certain calm disdain, but his perverseness seemed ungrateful considering the undeniable good usage and indulgence he had received from me. Again I sat ruminating what I should do, mortified as I was at his behaviour, and resolved as I had been to dismiss him when I entered my office. Nevertheless, I strangely felt something superstitious knocking at my heart and forbidding me to carry out my purpose, and denouncing me for a villain if I dared to breathe one bitter word against this forlornest of mankind. At last, familiarly drawing my chair behind his screen, I sat down and said, "Bartleby, never mind then about revealing your history, but let me entreat you, as a friend, to comply as far as may be with the usages of this office. Say now, you will help to examine papers tomorrow or next day. In short, say now that in a day or two you will begin to be a little reasonable. Say so, Bartleby." "At present I would prefer not to be a little reasonable," was his mildly cadaverous reply. Just then the folding doors opened and Nippers approached. He seemed suffering from an unusually bad night's rest, induced by severer indigestion than common. He overheard those final words of Bartleby. "Prefer not, eh?" gritted Nippers. "I'd prefer him, if I were you, sir," addressing me. "I'd prefer him. I'd give him preferences, the stubborn mule. What is it, sir, pray, that he prefers not to do now?" Bartleby moved not a limb. "Mr. Nippers," said "I'd prefer that you would withdraw for the present." Somehow, of late, I had got in the way of involuntarily using the word prefer upon all sorts of not exactly suitable occasions, and I trembled to think that my contact with the scrivener had already and seriously affected me in a mental way. And what further and deeper aberration might it not yet produce? This apprehension had not been without efficacy in determining me to summary measures. As Nippers, looking very sour and sulky, was departing, Turkey blandly and deferentially approached. "With submission, sir," said he, "yesterday I was thinking about Bartleby here, and I think that if he would but prefer to take a quart of good ale every day, it would do much towards mending him and enabling him to assist in examining his papers." "So you have got the word too," said I, slightly excited. "With submission, what word, sir?" asked Turkey, respectfully crowding himself into the contracted space behind the screen and by doing so making me jostle the scrivener. "What word, sir?" "I would prefer to be left alone here," said Bartleby, as if offended at being mobbed in his privacy. "That's the word, Turkey," said I. "That's it." "Oh, prefer. Oh, yes, queer word. I would never use it myself. But, sir, as I was saying, if he would but prefer. Turkey, interrupted I. Will you please withdraw? Oh, certainly, sir, if you prefer that I should. As he opened the folding door to retire, Nippers at his desk caught a glimpse of me and asked whether I would prefer to have a certain paper copied on blue paper or white. He did not in the least roguishly way accent the word prefer. It was plain that it involuntarily rolled from his tongue. I thought to myself, surely I must get rid of a demented man who already has in some degree turned the tongues, if not the heads, of myself and clerks. But I thought it prudent not to break the dismission at once. The next day I noticed that Bartleby did nothing but stand at his window in a dead raw reverie. Upon asking him why he did not write, he said that he had decided upon doing no more writing. Why? How now? What next? Exclaimed I. Do no more writing? No more. And what is the reason? Do you not see the reason for yourself? He indifferently replied. I looked steadfastly at him and perceived that his eyes looked dull and glazed. Instantly it occurred to me that his unexampled diligence in copying by his dim window for the first few weeks of his stay with me might have temporarily impaired his vision. I was touched. I said something in condolence with him. I hinted that, of course, he did wisely in abstaining from writing for a while, and urged him to embrace that opportunity of taking wholesome exercise in the open air. This, however, he did not do. A few days after this, my other clerks being absent and being in a great hurry to dispatch certain letters by the mail, I thought that, having nothing else earthly to do, Bartleby would surely be less inflexible than usual and carry these letters to the post office. But he blankly declined. So much to my inconvenience, I went myself. It's like having a dog and barking too, is it not? Still, added days went by. Whether Bartleby's eyes improved or not, I could not say. To all appearance, I thought they did, but when I asked him if they did, he vouchsafed no answer. At all events, he would do no copying. At last, in reply to my urgings, he informed me that he had permanently given up copying. What? Exclaimed I. Suppose your eyes should get entirely well, better than ever before. Would you not copy then? I have given up copying, he answered, and slid aside. He remained as ever a fixture in my chamber. Nay, if that were possible, he became still more of a fixture than before. What has to be done? He would do nothing in the office. Why should he stay there? In plain fact, he had now become a millstone to me, not only useless as a necklace, but afflictive to bear. Yet I was sorry for him. I speak less than truth when I say that on his own account he occasioned me uneasiness. If he would have named a single relative or friend, I would instantly have written and urged their taking the poor fellow away to some convenient retreat. But he seemed alone, absolutely alone in the universe. A bit of a wreck in the mid-Atlantic. At length, necessities connected with my business tyrannized over all other considerations. Decently as I could, I told Bartleby that in 6 days' time he must unconditionally leave the office. I warned him to take measures in the interval for procuring some other abode. I offered to assist him in this endeavour, if he himself would but take the first step towards a removal. And when you finally quit me, Bartleby, added I shall see that you go not away entirely unprovided 6 days from this hour, remember. At the expiration of that period, I peeped behind the screen, and lo! Bartleby was there. I buttoned up my coat, balanced myself, advanced slowly towards him, touched his shoulder, and said, "The time has come. You must quit this place. I am sorry for you. Here is money, but you must go." "I would prefer not to," he replied, with his back still towards me. "You must." He remained silent. Now I had an unbounded confidence in this man's common honesty. He had frequently restored to me sixpences and shillings carelessly dropped upon the floor, for I am apt to be very reckless in such shirt-button affairs. The proceeding then which followed will not be deemed extraordinary. "Bartleby," said I owe you $12 on account. Here are 32. The odd 20 are yours. Will you take it?" And I handed the bills towards him, and he made no motion. "I will leave them here then," putting them under a weight on the table. Then, taking my hat and cane and going to the door, I tranquilly turned and added, "After you have removed your things from these offices, Bartleby, you will of course lock the door, since everyone is now gone for the day but you, and if you please, slip your key underneath the mat, so that I may have it in the morning. I shall not see you again, so good-bye to you. If hereafter, in your new place of abode, I can be of any service to you, do not fail to advise me by letter. Good-bye, Bartleby, and fare you well." But he answered not a word, like the last column of some ruined temple. He remained standing, mute and solitary, in the middle of the otherwise deserted room. As I walked home, in a pensive mood, my vanity got the better of my pity. I could not but highly plume myself on my masterly management in getting rid of Bartleby. Masterly, I call it, and such it must appear to any dispassionate thinker. The beauty of my procedure seemed to consist in its perfect quietness. There was no vulgar bullying, no bravado of any sort, no choleric hectoring and striding to and fro across the apartment, jerking out vehement commands for Bartleby to bundle himself off with his beggarly traps. Nothing of the kind. Without loudly bidding Bartleby depart, as an inferior genius might have done, I assumed the ground that depart he must, and upon that assumption built all I had to say. The more I thought over my procedure, the more I was charmed with it. Nevertheless, next morning, upon awakening, I had my doubts. I had somehow slept off the fumes of vanity. I like that. Slept off the fumes of vanity. Does kind of dissipate like smoke on the water when you realise your own vanity, and vanity is mere folly. One of the coolest and wisest hours. It's a bit like smoking off the fumes of vanity when you've realised you've been used as a one-night stand yet again by some malfeasant low-level entity, cur. In which case it's not a mere fume, but an incendiary, vengeful fury that lingers long beyond that brief coupling with some passionate, trifling member of the male gender Homo sapiens, not so sapient, knuckle-dragging, low-level entity species. Just saying. Fumes of vanity. I'm trying not to laugh. It's occurred to me the time is imminent that I regain my full sexuality and splendour, hopefully with someone worthy of my passionate renderings of Homo sapiens sapiens in my full pristine, un-COVIDian, interfered delight. I have to worry about the shedding though. The shedding might set me back quite considerably. I have to worry about that, people of Earth. It's a great worry actually. I might be okay though, because I did catch COVID last year in October, so I've already been altered by virtue of that. How altered? I don't know. It's the not knowing that causes me a little bit of perplexity. But anyway, time will tell who is the man worthy of my love and my loins. Who can stay the distance, be a real man to me. Oh, dear goddess, is it even possible this late stage of life? Very much doubt it. So I will dance the dance of the triumphant and the wild and the free tonight and set hearts ablaze and libidos flickering, and just by my mere presence alone, you understand. So I really don't do anything that, erotic or sensuous, as I painted with a very broad brush, except when I appear in my corsets and my level of not giving out any fucknesses to anything in our current worldview or society. There will be Jack Daniels, and if I can slip it in, a bit of a mosh, but no head twirling, because it took me a week to recover from last week and I didn't do the head twirl either, so my neck really is quite fragile now. Oh dear goddess, maybe I should give up dancing, take up some other pastime. Wouldn't mind learning how to sail actually, like going to a yacht club and learning how to sail. I bet you that's an expensive hobby though, learning how to sail. And also it would involve me being surrounded by men also learning how to sail. You have to laugh. You do have to laugh. How does that song go? I am sailing, I am sailing. It's Rod Stewart, isn't it? I'm only sailing on my own fumes of vanity on a sea of going nowhere faster than ever before. You have to laugh. Well, it's delightful. I mean, otherwise you'd just cry, wouldn't you? Take me sailing, boys. Take me to the sea. Like a true Viking queen. Set sail upon a fine and sturdy craft and let me lie down languorously in the sun, absorbing the rays and the fumes of your vanity. But that I'll have to lose about 30 kilograms, so I look glamorous while I'm lying there like a beached whale. Sunning, giving myself skin cancers on top of a fabulous yacht. Oh, I'm too old for that. It's a ridiculous fantasy. But it got you all going for about 5 minutes, didn't it? Got me going too. Right, we have to, gentlemen and women of Earth, we have to calm our farms. We have to just settle. We have to just let that just settle back into some kind of moribund bathos of nothingness. But oh, if I was young again, the things I would have done, but my youth was wasted on idiots. It grinds my gears. But I am not young anymore, and I'm a free and autonomous, wild Viking, warrior, goddess, queen. Who knows what I might yet become and be capable of. $4,000 boots come to mind, but we had to let that one go, babies. One of the coolest and wisest hours a man has is just after he awakes in the morning. My procedure seemed as sagacious as ever, not only in theory. How it would prove in practice, there was the rub. It was truly a beautiful thought to have assumed Bartleby's departure, but after all, pardon me, that assumption was simply my own and none of Bartleby's. The great point was not whether I had assumed that he would quit me, but whether he would prefer so to do. He was more a man of preferences than assumptions. After breakfast, I walked downtown, arguing the probabilities pro and con. One moment I thought it would prove a miserable failure, and Bartleby would be found all alive at my office as usual. The next moment it seemed certain that I should find his chair empty. And so I kept veering about. At the corner of Broadway and Canal Street, I saw quite an excited group of people standing in earnest conversation. "I'll take odds he doesn't," said a voice as I passed. "Doesn't go? Done," said I. "Put up your money." I was instinctively putting my hand in my pocket to produce my own when I remembered that this was an election day. The words I had overheard bore no reference to Bartleby, but to the success or non-success of some candidate for the mayoralty. In my intent frame of mind, I had, as it were, imagined that all Broadway shared in my excitement and were debating the same question with me. I passed on, very thankful that the uproar of the street screened my momentary absent-mindedness. As I had intended, I was earlier than usual at my office door. I stood listening for a moment. All was still. He must be gone. I tried the knob. The door was locked. Definitely will have to move into a second video for this to be completed, this mission, people of Earth. The door was locked. Yes, my procedure had worked to a charm. He indeed must be vanished. Yet a certain melancholy mixed with this. I was almost sorry for my brilliant success. I was fumbling under the doormat for the key, which Bartleby was to have left there for me, when accidentally my knee knocked against a panel, producing a summoning sound, and in response a voice came to me from within. "Not yet, I'm occupied." It was Bartleby. I was thunderstruck. For an instant I stood like the man who, pipe in mouth, was killed one cloudless afternoon long ago in Virginia by summer lightning. At his own warm open window he was killed, and remained leaning out there upon the dreamy afternoon till someone touched him when he fell. "Not gone," I murmured at last, but again obeying that wondrous ascendancy which the inscrutable scrivener had over me, and from which ascendancy, for all my chafing, I could not completely escape. I slowly went downstairs and out into the street, and while walking round the block considered what I should next do in this unheard-of perplexity. Turn the man out by an actual thrusting I could not. To drive him away by calling him hard names would not do. Calling in the police was an unpleasant idea, and yet permit him to enjoy his cadaverous triumph over me, this too I could not think of. What was to be done, or, if nothing could be done, was there anything further that I could assume in the matter? Yes, as before I had prospectively assumed that Bartleby would depart, so now I might retrospectively assume that departed he was. In the legitimate carrying out of this assumption, I might enter my office in a great hurry, and, pretending not to see Bartleby at all, walk straight against him as if he were air. Such a proceeding would in a singular degree have the appearance of a home thrust. It was hardly possible that Bartleby could withstand such an application of the doctrine of assumptions, but upon second thoughts the success of the plan seemed rather dubious. I resolved to argue the matter over with him again. Bartleby, said I, entering the office with a quietly severe expression, I am seriously displeased. I am pained, Bartleby. I had thought better of you. I had imagined you of such a gentlemanly organisation that in any delicate dilemma a slight hint would suffice, an order, an assumption. An assumption. But it appears I am deceived. Why, I added, unaffectedly starting, you have not even touched that money yet, pointing to it just where I had left it the evening previous. He answered nothing. Will you or will you not quit me? I now demanded in a sudden passion, advancing close to him. I would prefer not to quit you, he replied, gently emphasizing the not. What earthly right have you to stay here? Do you pay any rent? Do you pay my taxes? Or is this property yours? He answered nothing. Are you ready to go on and write now? Are your eyes recovered? Could you copy a small paper for me this morning, or help examine a few lines, or step round to the post office? In a word, will you do anything at all to give a colouring to your refusal to depart the premises? He silently retired into his hermitage. I was now in such a state of nervous resentment that I thought it but prudent to check myself at present from further demonstrations. Bartleby and I were alone. I remembered the tragedy of the unfortunate Adams and the still more unfortunate Colt in the solitary office of the latter, and how poor Colt, being dreadfully incensed by Adams, and imprudently permitting himself to get wildly excited, was at unawares hurried into his fatal act, an act which certainly no man could possibly deplore more than the actor himself. Often it had occurred to me in my ponderings upon the subject that had that altercation taken place in the public street or at a private residence, it would not have terminated as it did. It was the circumstance of being alone in a solitary office upstairs of a building entirely unhallowed by humanizing domestic associations, an uncarpeted office, doubtless of a dusty, haggard sort of appearance. This it must have been which greatly helped to enhance the irritable desperation of the hapless Colt. And when this old Adam of resentment rose in me and tempted me concerning Bartleby, I grappled him and threw him. How? Why, simply by recalling the divine injunction, a new commandment give I unto you, that ye love one another. Yes, this it was that saved me, dear goddess. There's a lot I can say about that, but we don't have time. Aside from higher considerations, charity often operates as a vastly wise and prudent principle, a great safeguard to its possessor. Men have committed murder for jealousy's sake, and anger's sake, and hatred's sake, and selfishness' sake, and spiritual pride's sake, but no man that ever I heard of ever committed a diabolical murder for sweet charity's sake. You've never sat in a charity being ridiculed by other lunatics while you're waiting for your half-rotten vegetables, have you, sir? Oh, the dignity, the mock dignity, what was it? The fumes of vanity of the white privileged. Just say. Somebody needs to sling me a Jack Daniels right about now, because I'm feeling a little bit on the verge of anarchy myself. Also, it was so slightly horny, but shh, don't tell the men. To calm down, man. It's just a feeling, and it passes quickly. Especially when I look at the options that present themselves to me. The false, the feckless, the disingenuous, the impotent, and the verklempt. Could write a song about it. In fact, I might write one later. Don't mind me, it's my usual Christmas Hanukkah breakdowns that happen every December. Right on time. I should have known that it was brewing when I said St. Nicholas Day. Black Peter indeed. All the arseholes that robbed me of my wealth so that I should have to line up for half-rotten vegetables and murderous philanthropy. The condescending charity fucks and the charity that sucked and the degradation that came with it. Dear goddess, that's why no one dares ever fuck with the Tanya now. Don't ever try that, sunshine. Anyway, mere self-interest then, if no better motive can be enlisted, should, especially with high-tempered men, prompt all beings to charity and philanthropy. At any rate, upon the occasion in question, I strove. What about the time they gave me a tin of dog food for Beauregard that was so out of date it was bubbling? The tin was actually bubbling, like if I'd given it to my dog it would have poisoned him. This is charity in Brisbane, Australia. So you know what you can do with your fucking charity, don't you? Dear goddess. And here was I, in all my Judeo-Christian humility, accepting it with such grace and decorum, sweetness. I should have rammed that fucking can so far up their ass they couldn't shit for a week. But no, one must be gracious under fire. Accept one's charity with grace and humility and gratitude. Not be insulted and degraded for it as your reward. On that I shall go to war if that should ever happen to me again, just on that alone. Jewish Board of Deputies mocking me for my $4 shoes. Let us not forget, people of Earth. But they're reaping their own rewards post-Covidian epoch. I didn't even have to lay a curse upon anyone's heads. It just happened as if by some demonic force of will alone. The alien invasion. Only pure and true hearts who treated me with honour and integrity can lay their heads upon their pillow in good conscience, straighten their beds, wishing all blessings and good health upon you. The rest is like watching Sodom and Gomorrah just go up in a blaze of glory in one day and one night. Bing, bam, boom, babies. So be kind and laugh in the face of societal declension and disarray. There but for the gods go you. No matter what, no matter who, no matter how, the Tanya has survived you against all the odds. And that, my friends, is not just my own weird, whimsical, black gravel rash, gallows sense of humour, but my own sweet determination to refuse to submit to other people's atrophies. Just saying. At any rate, upon the occasion in question, I strove to drown my exasperated feelings towards the scrivener by benevolently constructing his conduct. Poor fellow, thought I. He don't mean nothing, and besides, he has seen hard times and ought to be indulged. Wouldn't hurt, would it? It's lovely when people indulge those of us who've been through far too many hard times. Far too many. I endeavoured also immediately to occupy myself, and at the same time to comfort my despondency. I tried to fancy that in the course of the morning, at such time as might prove agreeable to him, Bartleby of his own free accord would emerge from his hermitage and take up some decided line of march in the direction of the door. But no. 12:30 came. Turkey began to glow in the face, overturn his inkstand, and become generally obstreperous. Nippers abated down into quietude and courtesy. Ginger Nut munched his noon apple, and Bartleby remained standing at his window in one of his profoundest dead-wall reveries. There's a lot of disassociating, Bartleby. Speaks volumes. It's possibly a bit schizophrenic too. Not quite sure about that. I'm not, not a health professional. Just makes me wonder how he just removes himself mentally from his reality, stares at the wall. Some kind of epileptic seizures, perhaps. Will it be credited? Ought I to acknowledge it? That afternoon I left the office without saying one further word to him. Some days now passed during which, at leisure intervals, I looked a little into Edwards on the will and Priestley on necessity. Under the circumstances, these books induced a salutary feeling. Gradually I slid into the persuasion that these troubles of mine, we're about to get cut off, people of Earth, so don't freak out, I'll be back with part 2. That these troubles of mine touching the scrivener had been all predestinated from eternity and Bartleby was billeted upon me for some mysterious purpose of an all-wise providence, which it was not for a mere mortal like me to fathom. Yes, Bartleby, stay there behind your screen, thought I. I shall persecute you no more. You are harmless and noiseless as any of these old chairs. In short, I never feel so private as when I know you are here. At last I see it, I feel it. I penetrate to the predestinated purpose of my life. I am content. Others may have loftier parts to enact, but my mission in this world, Bartleby, is to furnish you with office room for such period as you may see fit to remain. I believe that this wise and blessed frame of mind would have continued with me, had it not been for the unsolicited and uncharitable remarks obtruded upon me by my professional friends who visited the rooms. But thus it often is, that the constant friction of liberal minds wears out at last the best resolves of the more generous, though to be sure, when I reflected upon it, it was not strange that people, entering my office, should be struck by the peculiar aspect of the unaccountable Bartleby, and so be tempted to throw out some sinister observations concerning him. Sometimes an attorney, I'm just having to giggle at the moment, I'm full of mischief today. It's quite astonishing, the things I could do. It just flows around me like some kind of energy. I wonder if it's even mine. Do you see me act so mischievously normally in my YouTube videos? I think there's been a few, but today is going to be a very strange day. Very strange day indeed. I might stay home tonight. When you're in such a state of ebullience and mischief, it would behoove me to stay home. But it's my Friday night and my dance. So on we go and on we go. Also, I can trust that my beautiful friend Ness and my handsome talented friend Juddy will keep a watchful eye over me, as they do normally while I do my mad mosh. I mean, you have to laugh. It's a bit like having to babysit the mama tea, isn't it? But little do they know, many times I'm babysitting other people in the club too, making sure we're all comfortable and safe. So it's a gift that keeps giving. Anyway,